welcome to another session on the topic conditional rendering in React. So even in one of the previous sessions, I believe we've discussed that there are scenarios where we require to render different components or to, let's say, perform different operations based on some particular conditions. And when we say based on some condition we are performing something, so we are sort of applying the if else logic, right? That if this particular condition is met, then we want to do this, else, and then there can be multiple if else's in this case. For example, you have three possible options, then you create three possible scenarios there, and accordingly we return something. So that is the basic logic. What we can hope from a bird's eye view what a conditional rendering might look like, and how we can achieve that in our code, in our project. Let's see it right into our sandbox. I hope you can see my screen now. So this will be our starting sandbox. Let me pop out this window. So if you look through the sandbox, we have an app.jsx and index.js, that is plain, nothing else. In styles.css, you'll be having some styles because I've created this simple login screen. And in components in app.jsx, you'll see that using those stylings and some like the input and button text and all, we've created this little login screen of ours. So it's not functional, it's just basically we have these input boxes and this button right here. So when we talk about conditional rendering, we sometimes need, as said before, some components, different components render differently based on some prerequisite or based on some condition being met. So let's say initially we create a variable which we say is locked, and we initially set it to false. So basically using this particular little app of ours, what I want to achieve is that right now you can see that I have hello there and these two input boxes and one sign in button. So let's say we are developing on our own app in which the login part that we have, it should behave differently in either of the two scenarios. So scenario number one, if the user is logged in, which will be represented by this particular is logged variable turning true, then we don't need that particular user to type all this out, and we just want to display hello there to that particular user. And in case is logged variable is marked false, which will represent that the user is not logged in yet, that in that particular case we want these three to be displayed. That means, okay, since you are not logged in, please provide your username and password and click on the sign in button. So that's what we want to imitate in this. So if we start doing this, what we can do is, let's say we create a function and we call that function logging. Okay, now in this particular function of ours, we will check whether is logged is true. And basically, since this is logged variable is a boolean, so you can remove this part as well, because since this is an if condition, so if this boolean stores a true variable, so it will check like if this particular is true, and if it's not, then the if condition will be turned invalid and the else condition will run. But still, in order to make things very crystal clear, we're gonna do it like this only. So we're checking for the if condition that if this particular variable is true, then we want to return this h1 tag. Let's cut this and paste it right here. And in the other case, if our user is not logged in, then we want to return all of this code right here. that we can represent like this. And finally, okay, let's take this code out from here as well, like this. And finally, this particular div, let's paste it right here, so that all of these are working properly. And in here, we will just return the logging function like this. Okay, so if you see right here, if I hit save and I head over to the pop-up window and I refresh this page, so basically what I did here is whatever logic that we had, or not logic, the initial lines that we wrote here, that displayed hello there, and this little form of ours, this login screen, I took it and I substituted that, all of that code, inside this function logging. And what this function logging is basically doing is, it is checking this particular variable of ours is logged, and it is saying that if this particular variable is true, then we just want to display hello there right here. And in case this particular variable is false, okay, so I think because of this div being placed at the function, the styling is not getting applied here. Let me try putting it back inside this, like this. And then if I close this like this, now putting it inside these curly braces, removing this semicolon from here. Okay, now it will be working just fine. Actually, I forgot to put it inside these braces because this is basically a logic we're writing, and all the JavaScript is supposed to be kept inside these curly braces. Okay, so this is the great thing with React, whatever you do, even the mistakes that you made, you'll get a feedback of those mistakes right in front of you. As you saw that this styling of making this hello there come right in the center of the screen, it was not being applied while I took this div inside the logging function mistakenly. Anyways, now you can see that if this particular is logged variable is true, then this particular condition is fulfilled and we are getting hello there printed right here. And let's say if this is logged condition was turned false, then this particular condition will run and we see the basic sign-in screen for the user. So from this point onwards, I would like to give you a little practice for you. So what I want from you guys is try to take this this entire function out of this app.jsx. Try to create a separate component, whether logging or login or whatever you want to call it, and inside that login function as well, as you can see that these inputs are also getting repeated, right? Since they are very similar to each other with type and placeholder, you can leave the button part, but these inputs, I want you to create a separate component for these inputs as well. Okay, so what you have to do, first of all, extract this entire code of login from here into a separate component, and then further inside login, I want you to create components for these inputs as well, and try to substitute values inside these type and placeholder texts using something that you've learned along the way. So, and the end result, it should behave exactly the same. If I turn this true, then it should display hello there, and if it's false, it should display the sign-in screen. Now pause this now and give it a try yourself. Okay, so what we gotta do is we need to take this entire code from here and create another file. Let's call our file login.jsx. First of all, we'll copy this and paste it right here, and then we'll create another function function login, and we'll put the entire login screen, the code for the login screen, inside our login function. Okay, so I'll put it like this, mentioning a return statement like this, and then inside here, okay, first getting back to login, let's export this from here as our default login. Going back to app.jsx, let's import that login from login, and now here, instead of these multiple lines, we are going to just render that login function of ours. And if we change this to false, you can see that it is working basically the same. Another thing that we needed to do was create an input component, and similar to login one, we will paste import react in here, then creating a function input like this. Login, let's take these, let's cut these out and paste it inside a return function like this. Now you can see that in these inputs that we have these similarities, right? We have type and placeholders, and we know how we can do this, get these both of these type and placeholder from the login component dynamically, and we can do it by the use of React props. So instead of explicitly writing that type is equal to text, we can write that type is equal to props.type, which we'll create in a second. And here we can write props.placeholder like this. Now inside login, first of all, let's import that input from input, and then here we'll create our own custom components, in which in the first part we'll say that the type is going to be, what was the type? I forgot. Okay, let me check what was the type initially. So it was text, right? Let's get back to login. The first one was text, and placeholder was called username in the first part. And here if we say, let's just copy paste this like this. In the second part, the placeholder was called password, and inside of text it was called password with a small p. Let's do this, and if now we see that on putting is logged equals to false, we are seeing the sign in screen, and if we turn this to true, we'll be seeing hello there printed. So you can see that up till this point we have reduced the lines of code that we initially wrote down to I think down to half, but still we can see that there are still many number of lines in here. So is there a way to further reduce this code? Okay, so let's try doing one thing. Instead of writing this function explicitly, let's try to paste this entire function from here to here. Now the problem with this is that initially we studied that inside these curly braces that we put inside our JSX file, we are always supposed to write JavaScript logic inside this. But if we are writing this if-else statement, this is basically a statement. And initially we studied that we are only allowed to write expressions inside them. All right. And you remember that at that point of time, we basically discussed in a little detail what is the basic difference between a statement and an expression. So in order to summarize in very precise words, a statement will be something that perform any sort of action or actions. So like in this case, we have an if-else statement. So it is basically checking that if this particular condition is met, then we have to perform this action, else we have to perform this action. And the fundamental identification, expression, the fundamental identification of an expression is that it will turn into a value, right? For example, we even discussed the arithmetic terms like 2 plus 3 or 2 minus 3 or something and something that will ultimately gives us a value. That particular line of code will be referred to as an expression, and anything that is simply performing action or executing something like even in this case checking for a particular condition, this will be a statement, and we are supposed to only write expressions inside these curly braces. So what if we had some sort of an alternative of if else that is actually an expression? So from the one of my open tab, and some of you might have guessed from the title of this video that there is something called a ternary operator in JavaScript, which is basically an expression. So the basic syntax, some of you who might have done some programming initially, you might be familiar with this particular syntax right here. For those of you who aren't, don't worry, we'll just drive right through it and understand what this basically is. So see, the ternary operator consists of three parts. Okay, the first part is the condition. The second part is whatever we want to display or whatever we want to render, and I'm talking this in the context of React. That will go right here in case this particular condition is true, and this particular part after this colon will be filled by whatever we want to render or display in case this condition is not true. Now if we compare this syntax with the task that we have right here, so this basically says that if the condition is true, and which condition are we currently performing our action on, whether is logged is true or not. So basically the condition here will say that if is logged is true, then we have to put the code here that we want to execute in case it is true, and that will be we want to render hello there inside an h1 tag. So that will go right here, and this will run in case this particular condition is false, which is sort of represented by this else statement. So if we try to refactor our code a little bit, let's say in here, if we say is logged is true, and instead of if, I'm going to use a question mark, and if it is false, instead of this we will use okay like this. If I remove this, and okay, I have one extra curly brace like this, So like this, we have to check if this particular condition holds true. Okay, is there something that I'm missing in here? Let's say I put this inside a return. This is a div. Okay, what is the problem in here? Unexpected token. Okay, I'm sorry. I think this particular bracket was causing the error. Yeah, now it's gone. So you can see that removing all that if else code in here, we are just writing the condition like this. And in order to further shorten it, as I've told you before, this is logged variable is itself a boolean. So you can just remove that equals true, because this will either be true or false. So this will particular condition will check that if is logged is true, then we have to return hello there inside an h1 tag, and in case this is false, we have to render this login here, and this can be further verified by flipping is logged to false. Now, since in here we have all three of these, the condition is also a JavaScript logic, and whatever value we write here is the stuff that we want to render or display. Same goes for this particular thing. So since all three of these are expressions, ultimately the entire value that is returned, or ultimately the final value that is returned by this ternary operator, is also an expression. So while if else will not work if we try to put it inside these curly braces, ternary operator will do the job without any issues, and it can be used as a great substitution for if else inside React if we're talking about this particular context. Now let's say let's talk about another case. Let's say, what if I want to display something if the condition is true, and in case this condition is not true, I don't want to display anything. What can I do in that particular scenario? So in one of the previous session, we have studied about how do we get hold of the time from the system itself if we want to get hold what is the current time right now. So let's say if I create a variable current time, and in order, as we studied, in order to create that, we head over to like this, we create a new date object, and by appending get hours function, we can actually get hold of the current hour that is going on. And in order to further check it, I can simply log it like this, and let's hit save and check console. So you can see the current time is around 12:10, and it is showing similarly right here. So let's say in this particular case, what we want to do is, let's comment this right out for now, and we write some code in which we are saying if our current time is greater than, let's say 2 is represented by 14. So let's say if it is around 2 p.m, then we are going to say okay, it is lunchtime. And if it is not, if it is before 2 in the morning, then we don't want to display anything. So what can be done in that particular case? So as we learned in our ternary operator, if this particular condition is true, we are saying that we want to display lunchtime, something like this. And in the case the condition is false, we don't want to do anything. So in that particular case, what we can do is we can display null. Okay, so in case by using ternary operator, if there is a case, there is a scenario where we don't want to do anything, So you can simply write null like this. And let's say if I update this by using something like 2022, let's say it is the month of November, even though it is not, and the time is 3 p.m. If it is something like this, then if you hit refresh like this, it should display lunchtime. If we check console, it is still showing 12. Okay, I think I made the same mistake I did in one of the previous sessions. Yeah. So this these optional there's attributes that you can put as year, month, day, hours, minute, second. I think we discussed it previously. So this way in here I'm telling that suppose that the current date is 1st of November 2022 and the time is 1500 hours, that is 3 p.m. in the afternoon. So this particular condition will hold true and it will display lunchtime. But in case if it is something smaller than that, let's say 9, then it will display nothing. Now there is an even shorter way in order to tackle these situations, and that is by the use of the AND operator. So if you head over to the official React documentation, you'll see that in several cases, even in the code snippets that you might have encountered up till now, you might have seen some sort of code written in the form like this. So this AND operator, which is represented by two ampersand symbols, it basically says that the particular line of code, or let me copy this, try to explain it inside our editor. So if I write something like this, so let's say I write a condition here, and in this particular code I write an expression like this. So what it will do is it will act similarly, or I'll say precisely, as this line of code, which means that in this case, if this particular condition is true, this was supposed to be executed, right? And if we use the AND operator, these two ampersands, then it will say this, okay, if this condition is true, then it will move further to the expression and execute this particular expression. Okay, so writing this line of code is equivalent to writing this line of code by the use of ternary operator. So in order to further shorten the code, many React developers prefer to write it this way, because in the AND operator, it means that it will work only if both conditions are true. And in the case of this condition being false, it will not bother to look at what particular expression we were talking about, and it will simply skip this particular line. All right, so let's try to write it like this. Instead of using the question mark, let's simply use the AND operator like this, and again, if you see, it will work similarly. Let's do this, and if I write 15, it will display lunchtime. So I hope you were able to understand what this AND operator does. It basically further shortens our code by making us write the condition as the first part of this this entire syntax, and the expression or the stuff that we wanted to get rendered, in the case of this condition being true, we put it as the second part in this line of code. So this behaves exactly as the ternary operator, in which we only wanted to display something in case the condition was true. But if you are in a particular scenario in which you wanted to do something if the condition is true, and you also want to do something if the condition is false, it is better to use ternary operator in that case. But if it was the other way around, this usage of this AND operator can be a great choice. If you want to study more about that, I'll be providing you with this link, or you can simply head over to Google and write about this logical AND operator in React, and you can go through the official documentation. Okay, so for this particular session, I think that will be all, and I'll be providing you with this sandbox link. And in the next part of this session, we'll be having a small practice session, and let's see what we'll do in that particular session. All right, guys. So since we have covered pretty much of time in this particular topic session only, so the practice session that we'll have, I'll be putting it in the next session of ours. So make sure you check out that and attempt that particular test, a little bit of that practice that we have. That will make sure that you have understood the concepts, and these sort of little practice sessions also enable you to use your own creativity, to use your own independent approach in order to solve a particular problem, because there are n number of ways to solve a particular problem. So for this particular session, I hope you were able to understand what conditional rendering is, what basically ternary operator, how to use it, when to use it, and when it is much wiser to use the AND operator instead of ternary operator. That is, if you have only one thing to display or to render in the context of React, in case of a particular condition being true or a particular condition being false. So in short way to say that based on a particular condition, we only have one particular action to perform. So that's when AND operator should be preferred over ternary operator, because it is much cleaner and it will make your code look much more shorter and understandable. But if you are not very much comfortable with that, feel free to use ternary operator as well in that case if you like. So up till now, if you have any doubts with respect to this session, the comment section is all yours, and I will see you in the practice session next week.